Hello, folks. Welcome back to the Mayakanand podcast under Mayanomics. In this podcast, I'm going to talk about an important thing that haunts most of the people around the world, the economists, not exempted out of it, is the US dollar debt. While most of the people understand US dollar debt in terms of the US debt within the nation, the national debt, in other words, but the real problem is much, much larger than that. And there are many versions of it, but I'm trying to get a more clarified outlook of how much the US dollar is debt is, and how much of influence that debt can have in the world economics and the US economics in specific, and how much of them are realistic, right? That's what we are going to see in this podcast. I'll take you to the board to better explain it instead of doing it over just the video. Okay, let's get into the number of facts and figures. In this video, we're going to talk about the US dollar debt, and I wanted to give a beautiful spin around it by giving the name avatars of US dollar and how the world is tangled around these avatars, right? Because the word avatars, means it's just a form, right, of real thing, there are many derivatives here, many forms of US dollar. There's no single US dollar in the world. That's what the word avatar means. So there are many avatars of US dollar. The very first thing that the US dollar printed and used inside the US. That's the main the source of US dollar. And when it comes to the debt, as of today, the debt dominated in US dollar within the US by various factions, right? The public debt, most of the people understand the public debt, means it's about $35 trillion. Public means the government prints money and uses it, right, for its own needs. Most of them are wasted. A lot of things about it, but then it's $35 trillion, and it keeps every 100. As of today, the statistics shows it's going to grow every 100 days another $1 trillion. Overall, if you look at it, the $3 trillion addition to the burden was not a big deal. That's why the Fed and the government are all doesn't worry about much on these debts, right? But the real problem is much more worse than this. So the household debt is $20 trillion, basically the home equity and other things. And the private business, which most people don't even understand, is the private equity and private businesses, right? Recorded and non-recorded ones are $20 trillion. Right? And then the financial product itself. Now businesses create products and solutions and do the transactions, but in the financial world, the product itself is financial derivatives. Most of the time, they don't go through the main economic system. They just keep printing IOU to one another, but then keep denominating the debt back in the US dollar. That debt is about 25 trillion. Put together, the direct US economic debt itself is $100 trillion. Okay. Now comes the avatars of US. So US dollar is not just, it is printed in the US, but most of the transactions are not necessarily use the printed dollars. And that's the, it's a kind of, you may call it as a scam, or it's not, it is not, but then that's the way the world goes. Trade is based on the trust. And if just presenting US dollar or just saying that I owe you in US dollar, I repay you back in US dollar, essentially one and the same. The thing is, if you are giving the, handing over the US dollar in an escrow or, into a bank, that becomes the actual collateral. But many times the collaterals are just words or IOUs or a contract, right? Denominated in the dollar, which never existed or which will exist, which may or may not exist in the future. So basically you're printing money from the future. Those debts are tremendous, right? Globally. And USA encourages this being a hegemony in order for US dollar to go around the world. And, it's been supported by US. It's not that the US is not aware of it. So there are many avatars of that dollar, right? This is where it is. So all the avatars put together, we call it as a global dollar, is about $1 trillion. Most of this data is approximate, but it has been well-researched data. Now, there are two categories of the global US dollar, global dollar: recognized and recorded, right? Recognized by the US banks or being done, transactions are done through the US banks or recognized by the US bank, by the US system. That is around $35 trillion. Somewhere between $30 to $35 trillion. I know there are a lot of unknown things, so adding another $5 trillion to around $35 trillion. Now there is a non-US bank and shadow actors, right? This is not my words. This is from, according to World Economic Forum, recently published in January. Article that shows it's $65 trillion. Non-US banks and non-US actors making the transactions debt to the US dollar. So put together 100 plus 100, the subtotal is going to be, it is $200 trillion global US dollar debt. That much of pressure is on the US dollar. In a simple word, if you say Americans owe the world, because it is dominated in the US dollar, Americans owe $200 trillion to the world, including the US, right? Total, put together the global, right? Then the next thing is, there's a global non-US dollar one, not denominated in US or not even done transactions or contract in the US, but has an indirect effect on the US. There are a lot of transactions done in dollar denominated transaction done by the UK, especially after the Brexit. Right now the numbers is very small, but because previously they were, that's about $100 trillion. Okay, it's non-US actors, non-US debts and it's basically I detected the overall global debt is 300 trillion, and I deducted 200 from that, and that's going to be another $100 trillion. It's not in US dollar denominated, but again, when things come crashing, probably this is going to add more burden to it as well. There are a lot of transactions done in dollar denominated transaction done by the UK, especially after the Brexit. Right now the numbers is very small, but because previously they were riding on euro dollar. Every European nation around the world, how much are debt or the contractual obligations they go around the world denominating in US dollar. Remember, that's not a printed money. It's just a IOU in the contractual obligation. Instead of euro, they're dominating in US dollar because the other party trusts us, whatever the reason, right? The euro dollar. Then China dollar. A lot of this transaction going, directly or indirectly with China, denominated in US dollars, right? Then you have the South Korea's economies, the transactions going around the world are mostly denominated in the Korean, US dollar. Japanese, we know that they've been piggybacking for a long time on the US. So there's a Japanese dollar, and then there is an Indian dollar, which most of the people are not heard of because it stays within the community and nobody even knows about it. It's some of the industries like information technology industry inflated the economy. Most of the contracts are all kind of a 10 years, 5 years contracts, and obligations were all in the US dollar. And it continues, over, there are known debt of few hundred billion, but then there are, unknown number of scale with the non-US actors and all these things, right? Probably will cross a trillion, few trillions. Remember, Indian dollar is again tangled with the other trading partners as well. And now Argentina is getting back into the US dollar game. Brazil had a lot of transactions denominated. Arab petrodollar. Petrodollar is a major avatar that's been dominating for the last 30 plus years. So the petrodollar petro is a backup asset, but then denomination is done in dollar. Then there's a whole African nations put together. There are transactions in dollars. Overall, the estimation of these avatars, right? It comes here. Now, I'm going to go to extra mile, which is an unknown territory. I agree. I'm not an expert in BRICS. I'm not an expert in what's going to happen in the world. Nobody can be an expert. But with my experience, expertise, and the knowledge that I gained from the other people, scholars and researchers and historians, and even closely watching BRICS and the technology behind BRICS, blockchain. I am an expert in the blockchain technology because I created my own blockchain AI network called Karma Capsule Network. So I know I'm an expert in that area. With the BRICS creating a currency system based on blockchain, that's the end of there's an answer for everything. Not necessarily. Technology not necessarily be answer to everything, but then there is a uniqueness to it, which I can address in different podcasts. That is going to, at one way or the other, a currency is going to be released by BRIC nations, and that currency is going to be backed by gold, right? Because the fake system of the Bitcoins is saying that the Bitcoin itself is the value and it itself is the trust and all. These are nonsense. I'm an expert in that area. I wrote about Bitcoins and cryptocurrencies as mountain goats. They just are a cult is trying to back it up. It has no value in it, and it's not necessarily the trust for a currency system. But the blockchain technology can create the trust system, because I'm building massive scale of consortium based organizations, which you can refer to my website, systems like AgroKarma, Energy Karma, Menschwurst. These are the systems of societies and consortiums created with blockchain as the core thing to hold the trust and the reliability and immutability in the system to bring the transactions and the marketplace together, right? Coming back to this, the BRICS is going to be backed by gold, and it has been going to be the trust going to be established by the blockchain technology among the actors of the BRIC nations and the secondary actors of the BRIC nations, the primary actors and the secondary actors. The trust is going to be established by the blockchain, and then still the trust itself cannot be value. It has to be backed by another value, which in this case is gold, right? That's where they're going to win. It's never about whether China's money or India's money or South Africa's money or even Russia's money. No, it's about how much they can transact with each other and how they can increase the block where the new currency can be accepted, right? Can be accepted as a token within the consortium actor. So BRICS is a consortium. I do understand it. People ask me, I will tell you why BRICS would be successful, because it's building a consortium and a block. Yes, even the US dollar, euro dollar, this is a block too. This is kind of an official block, but the whole onus is on the US dollar. In this case, it's a block and it's a consortium, and it is going to, they're improving. I think they have a lot of experts still working on trying to make it perfect before, it goes public, right? Now, the real point I want to make here is the BRIC is piggybacking on gold. But then remember, these two are interchangeable, but gold can buy US dollar. The gold market most of the gold market is dominated in US dollar. That means gold can buy US dollar, but US dollar can't buy gold. It's not two-way, right? You can buy in a different way, but then, really, officially you cannot. You can buy anything in the market with any domination, but more and more, if there is no concrete, right, tie-up between, in the past it happened that you cannot buy US dollar, gold with the US dollar, with one sketch of the pen, the president can outlaw it, right? So remember this, the transaction can add more debt in US dollar and assets into the BRIC system. And I know I'm oversimplifying it, because sometimes in order to understand what's going to happen, not to get too much detail, then it becomes a speculation. So I don't want to speculate, but then I know that conceptually it is going to be like this, right? Debt will add more when BRICS currency comes into the system. The blocks of people will continue to trade, but then the debt, if they allow, US should wake up now. If they allow the contracts to happen, the debts can still be written in US dollar, putting all the debt into the US system, and then the liabilities into the US system, but the assets into the BRICS block. That would be, I'm not speculating, but yeah, any smart person would understand. You don't have to be a super economist to understand this, right? This is what's going to happen. Over the next 5 years, there is a possibility it can add another $200 trillion. 5 to 10 years time, it may add $200 trillion, making it to, here I'm speculating, it can go up to $500 trillion, where it becomes almost impossible for US to recover unless until they started taking action now, right? Most of these things are getting melted. Within the US is going to melt slowly. 1/3 of that is already melted, and another 1/3 is in the process of melting. But this thing can melt, and the US system can correct itself back to the basics, which is transactions in real terms. But then, can you do that globally? Can other people be very fair and while settling for the real transaction? I don't think so. It's going to be a big problem ahead for the US. If you have any comments, please write to me, maya.kannan@mayakannan.com. You can be a part of my inner circle, mayakannan.com/inner circle. I'll be glad to answer your emails, and follow me on YouTube channels and LinkedIn. Let's get connected. We'll continue the conversation. Until then, have a nice day. Bye-bye.